Coming up today, Seoul and its surrounding areas will be the focus of the party's campaigning efforts today, with 5 days to go before Election Day. A 2-day early voting period has just begun. The Korean government demands Japan stop making false territorial claims over Korea's easternmost island of Dokdo. Tokyo is expected to make such claims in its soon-to-be-released annual diplomatic report. First, chilling new footage has been released showing the missing Brussels terror attack suspect walking calmly through the Belgian capital as he escapes. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Friday, April 8th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning, early voting for the April 13th general election has just started. Those unable to make it to a polling station next Wednesday will have the next 2 days to cast their vote. The parties will be monitoring the early voter turnout as it could have significant implications on the final outcome. Ji Myung-gil starts us off.
The country's three main political parties are scrambling to garner public support before early voters head to the polls on Friday to try to put some space between themselves and the competition. Early voters can cast their ballots from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Korea time on Friday and Saturday at one of the 3,500 polling stations nationwide. During the early voting period, the ruling Saenuri Party is targeting voters in their 50s and 60s. The main opposition Minju Party of Korea is targeting people in their 20s and 30s. And the fledgling centrist People's Party is targeting undecided voters and those fed up with both of the leading parties. However, the infighting that affected all of the parties during the candidate selection process has caused voters to become disenchanted with politics, which could spell trouble for the opposition parties. In Korea, low voter turnout typically hurts the liberals rather than the conservatives. Korea's election watchdog first adopted their early voting system during the April by-election in 2013 as part of an effort to boost the voter turnout rate. The first time early voting was used, turnout was 4.9%, but by the 2014 June local elections, it had risen to 11.5%. This is the first time early voting will be used for a general election, and if turnout reaches 15%, then political analysts expect the total voter turnout for this election to reach 60%. During the early voting period, candidates are prohibited from campaigning within 100 meters of polling stations, and the election watchdog has vowed to clamp down on slander between rivals. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
So it's the 9th day of the 13-day campaigning period on this Friday, and the major political parties will spend the final day of the work week mostly canvassing voters in Seoul and its surrounding areas. Chief of the ruling Saenuri Party, Kim Moo-sang, will be looking to drum up support in the heavily populated Gyeonggi-do province, a key battleground, which is also home to the greatest number of National Assembly seats up for grabs. Beginning in Anyang, a city south of Seoul, he will be moving westward, calling for support for his party's candidates. The main opposition Minju Party of Korea's interim leader, Kim Jong-in, will be covering a total of 15 electoral districts on this Friday. He's scheduled to stump in the western port city of Incheon, northwestern Gyeonggi-do province and northern Seoul. The minor opposition People's Party will begin today's campaign pitch further south of Seoul from the central city of Daejeon. The party's co-leader Ahn Cheol-soo will be meeting voters around Daejeon's main train station and other busy areas there before moving up closer to Seoul. When Koreans head to the polls on April 13th, they will get 2 ballots, one to vote for their district representative and one to show their support for a particular party. The former will determine how many proportional representatives each party will get in the National Assembly. For a breakdown of how things are looking for the parties this year in that regard, SHIN Se-min reports.
300 lawmakers will be elected come April 13th, with 253 selected through district elections and the remaining 47 allocated by proportional representation. Proportional representatives are awarded to the parties based on the number of votes they get. But to be eligible, a party has to get more than 3% of the vote, or more than 5 of its candidates have to be elected. This year, there are 21 parties running, resulting in one of the longest ballots ever printed. The 158 candidates in contention for proportional representative seats generally have not held office before, but come from a wide variety of backgrounds and reflect a party's vision. They have been nominated and ranked by the party, with the higher numbers given priority once the number of seats has been determined. The ruling Saenuri Party currently has the most proportional representatives, with 27, and the main opposition Minju Party of Korea has 20. And the previously collected polling data shows that those numbers aren't likely to change much after the upcoming election. Polling company Realmeter made some predictions of how many proportional representatives each party will get based on the party's approval ratings in the week of March 28th to 30th. Its projections show the ruling Saenuri Party garnering 20 seats based on its approval rating of 37.7%, the Minju Party getting 14 with its 25.2% approval rating, the People's Party getting 8, and the Justice Party 5. A similar survey done by Gallup based on ratings from March 29th to 31st projects a similar outcome, with Saenuri Party taking 23 seats, the Minju Party getting 13, the People's Party 8, and the Justice Party 3. SHIN Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, in non-election related news, Japan is set to make fresh territorial claims to Korea's easternmost island of Dokdo in its annual diplomatic paper. The issue has been a thorn in the side of Korea-Japan relations for decades now. Seoul says the claims are groundless and it is fighting back with a PR campaign of its own, as our Kim Hae-sung reports.
We've been watching Japanese media's coverage on Tokyo's diplomatic blue book and its claims over Dokdo Island. What I can clearly say at this point is that Dokdo belongs to Korea historically, geographically, and by international law. Japan should stop all kinds of provocations that undermines Korea's sovereignty over Dokdo.
That's according to Seoul's Foreign Ministry Thursday in response to media reports that Japan is poised to issue its diplomatic paper for this year, which includes fresh claims to Dokdo Island. To shed more light on the nation's easternmost island, 215 kilometers from the nation's east coast, Dokdo has been at the center of a territorial dispute between Seoul and Tokyo, as Japan has repeatedly made false sovereignty claims over the rocks. To help the Korean public learn more about the island, the Korea Hydrographic and Oceanographic Agency has released more geographical facts on Dokdo. The 168 meters above sea level is just the tip of the iceberg, literally. Measured from underwater, the rocks stand at a height of 2,068 meters. That makes Dokdo taller than Mount Halla, Korea's highest peak at 1,950 meters. Dokdo has been known for its unique landscape and ecosystem, which is home to rare fauna and flora as well as marine life. According to government reports, Dokdo has abundant mineral resources that can become a great asset to the country. It was annexed by Japan in 1905 ahead of its colonial rule of the Korean peninsula, and Korea regained sovereignty over the island after World War II. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Now, South Korea is trying to win permission from the United States to use the U.S. military's GPS. That will hopefully enhance South Korea's ground-to-ground guided missiles to counter North Korea's newly developed 300mm multiple launch rocket system. Seoul's Defense Acquisition Program Administration says negotiations are already underway, but the approval might take some time as the process is complex due to a number of security considerations. South Korea plans to develop ground-to-ground guided missiles by 2018, which have a range of 120 kilometers, and implement the defense system by the following year. Now, earlier this week, the World Health Organization announced that raising awareness of diabetes was one of its main goals this year. The Korean government was quick to respond, launching a campaign on Thursday to wage war on the nation's sugar consumption. Hwang Ho-jun reports.
I eat them usually when I'm under the weather or when I'm bored after eating a meal.
They say sweet snacks are not good for you, but they do make you feel more at ease. That's why they're so appealing.
The Korean government has launched a campaign implementing a guideline to the daily sugar intake in the country. Marking the World Health Day on Thursday, the Health Ministry's move is in line with the World Health Organization's effort to raise awareness on diabetes as the disease is rapidly growing all around the world.
We consider changing the dietary habit is the most urgent task when trying to prevent diabetes. Our message is to introduce low-sugar dietary habits that people can follow through.
According to the WHO's report in 2016, the number of adults with diabetes has quadrupled worldwide in under 4 decades. Even in Korea, diabetes is also a problem as the increasing sugar intake due to westernized dietary habits are one of the main culprits of obesity in the country.
The reason diabetes is scary is that it doesn't show any symptoms at first, but can bring very serious complications if left untreated for a long time.
The Ministry of Health said the daily sugar intake of an average Korean was roughly 65 grams in 2015, about a 40-gram excess to what is recommended, which is less than 5% of the total daily caloric consumption.
For the average person who consumes 2,000 calories a day, that means their daily sugar intake should be no more than 25 grams or 6 teaspoons worth, about the same as a half a can of soda.
Some of the golden rules that the government presented are checking the ingredient labels of processed foods, reducing the use of honey and syrup when cooking, eating fresh fruit instead of drinking juice, and not consuming coffee from vending machines when eating out. Hwang Ho-jun, Arirang News.
Now, more Koreans are choosing to put off walking down the aisle, and that's reflected in the latest figures. Last year, Korea's marriage rate actually hit a record low. And for more on the driving forces behind this concerning trend, Hwang Jie reports.
I've just managed to land a job and I need to settle down here. I'm also not financially independent from my parents, so I think I'll have to wait for maybe 2 more years to get married.
I think for me, the main reason of putting off marriage is economic issues. I need to buy a house, and to do so, I need a certain amount of money. I wasn't able to do that yet, so I had to delay getting married.
Due to such tendency of waiting longer to tie the knot, coupled with a fewer number of people falling in the marriageable age bracket, the marriage rate in Korea hit the lowest since 1970 when related data was first compiled at 5.9. The figure represents the number of marriages per 1,000 people. The total number of marriages in 2015 also stood at around 302,000, the fewest since 2003. It's no surprise that the average age of people getting married for the first time is on the rise. In particular, the average age for women hit 30 for the first time ever.
Both men and women are now spending more time studying and finding jobs, and this is raising the average age for first-time marriages.
But delaying the walk down the aisle may mean more stable and wiser marriages. The number of divorces last year dropped for the first time in 4 years to roughly 109,000. Hwang Jie, Arirang News.
Prosecutors in Belgium have made a new appeal for help in the hunt for the so-called man in the hat, the prime suspect seen in footage in the Brussels airport attack last month. Newly released video and still images show him walking into central Brussels while talking on the phone. It's thought the suspect attempted to blow himself up alongside 2 fellow suicide bombers, but fled after his bomb failed to go off. You're looking at some of the CCTV footage there. The bombings at the airport on March 22nd killed 16 people. A second bombing at a metro station an hour later killed another 16 people in a coordinated series of attacks later claimed by the Islamic State terror group. The fallout from the so-called Panama Papers is spreading through the elite in China as more reports emerge about the billions of dollars taken out of that country each and every year. The New York Times and the Wall Street Journal delved into the names on the list of tax evaders, and controversy is intensifying that family members of key Politburo members, including President Xi Jinping, are implicated. The New York Times reported that at least 3 of the 7 people on the Chinese Communist Party's most powerful committee have relatives who have controlled secretive offshore companies. The British daily The Guardian said President Xi's brother-in-law emerged as a shareholder of 2 companies based in the British Virgin Isles in 2009. The daughter-in-law of Liu Yun-san, who is China's propaganda chief, was also once a shareholder and director of a company registered in the British Virgin Islands. Well, that's all we have for now on this Friday morning here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you, as always, for watching. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts, but if we don't see you, do have a great weekend. So until next time, goodbye.